what's going on everyone? Today I'm going to be taking you through my process of redesigning the cover art for Travis Scott's Owl Pharaoh in a retro Japanese style, so let's get into it. All in all, this was definitely the retro Japanese redesign I spent the least amount of time on. The inspiration for the layout of the redesign came from a series an artist I follow called Redesigned did a few months back. I really dug the grid-like layout on those pieces and wanted to try something like that for Owl Pharaoh. The first thing I did for the piece was make the background. To achieve the effect, I followed Spoon Graphics' tutorial on how to make a topographic map texture in Photoshop. To start, I created a new layer, clicked on the filter at the top, went down to render, and then clicked clouds. Next, I did the same thing on the same layer, except I selected difference clouds instead of clouds this time. After that, I gave the layer a blur, posterized it, and went to filter, stylize, and find edges. If you don't like the final result, you can go back and try a different amount of blur and posterization. Finally, for the background, I added a black and white gradient map and made that a clipping mask on the background. Also, later in the video, I'll invert the colors of the background. Next, I added my middle shapes. I made one large rectangle that would act as the separator between my background and my middle pictures later in the piece. Then I added three more shapes, a rectangle that took up all of the left side, another rectangle on the right, and a square that went above the right rectangle. I then added the two pictures which both looked to be from the same photo shoot as the original mixtape's cover and also the original cover. I created a clipping mask on each of the three pictures so that they would only appear on the shapes that I wanted them to be grouped with. I then grouped all of those pictures. Once those were added, I added a black and white gradient map to the pictures, this time with the colors much closer than with the background's gradient map. I added an old paper texture and set its blending mode to hue, added a hue and saturation adjustment layer to make the main color red, added black screen tone dots with the blending mode set to hard mix, and finally added a dirt texture and set the blending mode to divide. I changed the blending mode to overlay for all the grouped middle pictures to change the all white look to more of a realistic look, and also made the background bigger to make the texture more noticeable. To wrap the piece up, I added the translated title and laid the characters where I wanted them to be on the background. I rotated and moved each character until they were all in places I liked and started erasing the parts of the background that intersected with them. Once that was finished, I drew some of my own shapes in the empty spaces, added the top "May La Flame Live Forever" and bottom Travis Scott text, once again erased any lines from the background that intersected with the text, and finally added the Japanese parental advisory logo. After I was done recording, I also erased some shapes on the top left and added my sneaky watermark. But that about does it for how I redesigned Travis Scott's Owl Pharaoh mixtape cover art in a retro Japanese style. If you have any questions on how I achieved any effects, leave a comment or DM me on Instagram or Twitter. See ya!